Hey everybody, we're back with more Life and Times of George Washington. We've just crossed the Delaware River. It's Christmas night 76 and they're on their way to Trenton. So after crossing the Delaware, the Army was on the move. You know, they're double quicking it to get there as fast as they can because speed mattered more now than the strength of their force. They're behind schedule, so as they've completed their landings, daylight is broken and Washington makes their way toward. So things are kind of on the fragile side here because the timing was important. If his forces were too late, then the Hessian troops, the British, would be ready in Trenton for Washington and his men. If they were trying to string things out too early, it's possible that some units of the Continental Army wouldn't have kept up and they wouldn't all hit in force at the same time. And so this window was small. Now, the Hessian troops, the mercenaries that the British Crown had contracted, were the ones that were holding the town of Trenton. They are German troops that, the families between the British royal family and the Hessians, they owe each other favors. So they're experienced soldiers. They've been in combat on the European continent, but they were really spread thin, and they weren't expecting an attack in the middle of bad winter weather, and they probably had celebrated a bit too much on Christmas night. Now, Washington, in preparation for the Hessians, had divided his force, and so he's got different columns that are moving on separate roads, hoping to converge on the city of Trenton before resistance was able to solidify. Now, nothing was guaranteed here. If all this coordination failed, then the Continental Army would be trapped within enemy territory here in New Jersey. But fortunately for Washington and his troops, they held on to the element of surprise. And the attack, it came quickly. Street by street, position by position. There was confusion among the Hessian soldiers. There were brief exchanges of fire, but the fighting was short. The Hessian command collapsed before it could even organize, and within several hours, the town was under American control. And Washington does not linger here. They are gathering prisoners. They're not resting on their laurels. They're securing supplies, and they're preparing to move again. Now, this was not just like a decisive victory, right? It's not a Gettysburg in the Civil War kind of canon, but it was a narrow success. It was all about one that depended on timing and the weather and the execution of what was happening, that all aligned just right, just long enough within that narrow window. And at Trenton here, the revolution didn't just suddenly turn and everything pivoted in the favor of the rebellion, but for the first time in several months, the collapse of the Continental Army is paused. And there's a possibility that this hope re-entered the story through this very small opening at Trenton.